Hi, I'm Dalton, Miracle Champion for Erlanger, and where are we and what do you do here?
Hey Dalton, I'm Adam. I'm the Conservation Manager here at the Tennessee Aquarium's Conservation Institute. Welcome, we're glad to have you here today. We work on fish in the Southeast. Southeast is a really special place. There are a lot of different kinds of fish here in the Southeast that we feel are really important, and we do a lot of conservation work to help those fish stay healthy and living in the streams and rivers that we like to enjoy and swim in.
Can we look around?
Yeah, sure. Let's go look around.
Okay.
So this is our propagation room. As you can tell, there's a lot of pumps, a lot of water.
Yeah.
We have these pumps and water going all year long. They help us keep our fish alive and healthy, living in the streams. We have living streams over there. We have darters here, and we have some sturgeon over here. Let me show you those.
Oh.
So these are our lake sturgeon. They live in the Tennessee River. We get them from Wisconsin. And they've been growing here since about May of this year. We get them. They live on the bottom of the river, and we feed them little worms all summer long. And then in about October, we release them out into the Tennessee River so that they can go swim free and hopefully go on to make more sturgeon.
What's up with the whisker things?
So those are called barbels, and the barbels help them detect food on the bottom of the river. You'll notice that their mouth is turned down. That helps them eat the mussels and the clams and the things that they prefer in their diet. And the little barbels help them feel all of their prey items on the ground. You'll notice they have different coloring too. That's kind of like camouflage. It helps protect them from larger predators. The camouflage and the different patterns on there really blend in with the rocks in the bottom of the river, and it really helps them stay away from predators and avoid detection by some of those bigger fish that may want to try to eat them.
How big do they get?
So these are very small, but they can get up to 6, 7, 8 feet long. They can get over 100 pounds. They're some of the bigger fish in the Tennessee River. So these are Southern Appalachian brook trout. They live high up in the mountains, and they love cold, cold water. We've been raising brook trout for about 10 years now. They're part of our hatchery program, so we take adult fish and we mix the eggs and the milk of the male and the female, and then we actually grow them out into eggs, and then those eggs are going to form tiny little fish, and then eventually we'll release those fish back out into the mountains, streams that they're from. So these are our Southern Appalachian brook trout. Let's go check out the tangerine darters that we have over here. So these are tangerine darters. They come from the Tellico River, about 2 hours from here. They're one of the bigger darters in the state of Tennessee.
Are they coming up to the bus here?
So they think that we're going to feed them.
Oh.
They are really good at knowing when their feeding times are. They see people come up and they think that we're going to do the same thing. These bigger ones with all of the color, these are males. The males like to attract females with all of that color, and you can see how decorative his fins are. He has the orange line in the top of the fin, and then that back fin almost looks like a giant feather.
Yeah.
All of those things are meant to attract the female into his nest so that they can go on to make more tangerine darters.
So it's like a peacock.
Exactly. So we go out in the fall of every year and collect adult fish in the Tellico River. We go out and snorkel for those fish. We find where they're living, and then once we've found where they are, we get what's called a seine. It's a giant net, and we put the net behind where we think they are, and then we get a crew of people with mask and snorkel to kind of herd these tangerine darters into that net, much like you would herd, you know, cows into a fence. We herd tangerine darters into seines, and that's how we catch them. All right, so these are some of the fish that we work with in our propagation lab. Let's go upstairs and check out our genetics lab, and all the other research that we do up there. Yeah, so we're going upstairs to our labs and our offices.
So what's up with all the drawings?
So we have students come in and do art projects on some of the research fish that we're working with. You can tell they drew some brook trout and some tangerine darters. Some of them drew some sunfish. So we have students come that not only do research but also try to do art and take pictures of these fish and take them back and make their own interpretations with colored pencils and different types of media. I really like this one with the watercolor. All right, we're gonna go in here and check out our offices and show you where we do some of the grant work that we do. All right, so this is our office space. We have an open office. Every summer we have fellows come. They help us with some of the research projects and some of the different things, programs that we have going throughout the summer. We have a full lab here that does microplastics work. We have a really high-powered microscope in there that can take pictures of things in the water and tell us what kinds of plastic that might be in the water. We really have been doing this research for about 10 years now, I think, and that's really just trying to see what types of plastic are in the Tennessee River and how that may affect fish and the water quality.
So what are microplastics?
So microplastics are these tiny pieces of plastic that you cannot see with your eye. Think of like foam or something like that, and you take the shavings of it and it becomes this tiny little almost dust particle. Those are microplastics, and they're really hard to see with the naked eye. So we have to use a high-powered microscope to help us see what those plastics are. This microscope can actually tell us what types of plastic they are and sort of the chemical makeup of those different types of plastics. Yeah. So that's what we call our clean lab. Then we have a genetics lab, sort of dirty lab, that we can go in, and we have different microscopes that can help us see the different parts of fish. So fish have all these different types of anatomy that helps us identify them. So we have a different type of microscope here that can help us look at the different types of fish and all of the anatomies that make them unique and different. And so we'll use this microscope to maybe count the scales on the fish, or maybe we'll use this microscope to count the fin rays of a fish, or look at the spots in the tail.
What's going on with this guy? What's this?
So we have different jars that we collect fish out in streams with. And once we've collected those fish, we'll bring them back here to our lab to look in those microscopes that I was talking about earlier, and we'll count different things. Because a lot of fish look, especially minnows, they look similar and much alike. So we have to use the different characteristics of the fish to differentiate what they are. So some fish look exactly the same, but some of those fish may be a little different genetically. They may have a different genetic makeup than another fish that looks exactly like it. So that's what we do here in this lab. We'll take these fish, collect them in a stream, put them in a jar, and then we can come back later to assess whether or not those fish were healthy. We can look at the different communities out in the stream, and it's just like our communities. If you have a lot of different things there, then that tells you that there's a healthy population of fish there. We can also look at the bones and the different morphologies and take those things and look at those.
What's the morphology thingy?
So the morphology is how the fish looks, right? Like the shape of it. Like the morphology of this, like it has a unique tail, and it has a really fat head, whereas maybe these fish have a skinny, slender body. This fish has a wider body. So the morphology really is what the fish looks like.
So what's this thing? This big thing?
So this is the skull to a gar fish. And a gar is a prehistoric fish, an ancestral animal, in that it's like a dinosaur. It's just like you think of alligators. Ancestral animals have descended through time, through millions of years, and they are sort of living dinosaurs. And a gar is a good representation of that. You can see these plates on the top. These are really bony plates, and a lot of dinosaurs and animals from millions of years ago had this as armor to protect them. And so through time, fish have evolved to not need these bony plates, and fish have become more like these smaller body fish, to where they don't need those hard plates anymore to survive. And so it's a characteristic that allowed them to survive millions of years ago, but it's a characteristic that they may not necessarily need now. So those are some of the fish that we have in jars. We have a lot more. Let me go show them to you. So this is our fish collection. We have fish from all over the world in here. We have fish from saltwater and freshwater. We keep fish in jars and preserve them as specimens, just like museums do all across the country. Some of these specimens may be loaned from different museums, and museums may borrow them from us. All of this is part of scientific research. Preserving these different fish help us ask different scientific questions and answer those. So some of the really cool things that we have in here are, we have a shark head.
So how do you keep all these things preserved?
So that's a really good question. This is rubbing alcohol, just like you would get over the counter at your local drugstore. First they were preserved in formalin, and then the formalin was drained out, and then they were put in rubbing alcohol to preserve them. We can keep them in these jars for maybe 100 years. There's jars that are multiple hundred years old that people have collected. And you can see we have different types of fish just in all of these jars. A lot of this is just record keeping, right? Just like you would write things down in a book, these are records that are physical records that tell us where, when, and how these fish were collected. These are really important to collect too, because sometimes fish disappear from rivers and we may not have a record of that fish, and we can come here and use this as the record to say, did fish live in that stream before? And we can pull our jar and look at that and tell. So a lot of the specimens that we have at the Tennessee Aquariums Conservation Institute are freshwater fish from streams, and that's really one of the main things that we focus on. But we also have some saltwater specimens that are really cool that I can show you. So one of the cool specimens we have is a hammerhead shark. Have you ever seen one of those at the beach?
No.
No?
So how big do they get, because this guy's barely fitting in this jar here?
So this is probably just a baby hammerhead, but these can get 12 to 15 feet long. They can be giant sharks. We also have a stingray too. So not only do we do freshwater research, we look at saltwater things too, especially in the fish world, because saltwater research can also help us in some of the freshwater research that we do.
What's up with his mouth there?
So stingrays have a downturned mouth, just like a sturgeon, because they like to eat things on the bottom. Shrimp, crab, those little things crawling around on the bottom of bays.
What is this guy?
Okay, that's a trout. So it looks like it might be a, oh yeah, it's a rainbow trout.
Yeah.
So that's the type of trout that you would typically find in a Georgia or Tennessee cold water stream. They're also stocked in streams so that anglers can go out and catch them. And people like to eat those as well.
So thanks for letting me come over and showing me all the stuff you do here.
Yeah, thanks for coming out. We really enjoyed having you. I hope you learned a lot today, and come back and see us whenever you want.
I learned that you can keep a shark head in alcohol.
Yeah, that's a good thing to learn, yeah.